Hello. Okay, today we're going to be talking about constructivism a little bit, talking about what it is. About a month ago, I probably would have no idea what it was, but being in class this past month has really helped me learn quite a few things. So what is constructivism? Constructivism is the idea that the child is the center of the knowledge, or the center of the classroom, and that the teacher's role is to facilitate the knowledge to the child. Constructivism is an epistemology and pedagogy. Obviously, as an epistemology, it's a theory of learning or of teaching. As a pedagogy, is the actual practice of carrying out a constructivist approach. Obviously, that's a little harder with the laws, SOLs, and government the way that it is, being so geared towards a traditional classroom. A constructivist classroom differs greatly from a traditional classroom. I guess easy way to understand it is looking at the different characteristics between the two. In a traditional classroom, the class, first off, the teacher is viewed as the instructor, really. While in both views, the teacher is expected to be an authority on the subject. In a traditional classroom, the teacher parlays that information straight to the student. You always hear the term tabula rasa, or blank slate. The student is really viewed in a traditional classroom as a blank slate, and that the teacher needs to project this knowledge onto them so that they can regurgitate it on their 50-question multiple choice exam that will eventually end up determining their grade. In a constructivist classroom, everything's a little different. It's not nearly as rigid. The teacher is viewed more as a facilitator than as an outright instructor or transmitter of knowledge. The teacher's more like a guide to the subject, while still viewed as an expert in the field in relation to the students. The goal of the teacher should really be to take the kids along the path to understand this concept, instead of being taught part to whole like a traditional classroom. The classes are taught whole to part, so that the general concept or general idea is introduced first, and then from that, the more minute or frivolous details are given. But in traditional classroom, the points are viewed as frivolous because they haven't been connected to a whole yet. In a constructivist classroom, the idea is that you present the general idea, and then all these minor details are accommodated by the student, and these little details build on their understanding of the concept, instead of vice versa, where the concepts are continually stacked or the little details are continually stacked to add up to a general concept. The general concepts are given to you in constructivism. It really helps the students generalize the concept when they've been given the general idea, and then when they're given the small pieces of information, that helps them understand the application of the concept in real-world contexts. A constructivist classroom really stresses to make information relevant to the student and relevant to the real world, so that the question to the student, when do I need to know this, doesn't really come into a play, because they feel as though that they do need to learn this. It has intrinsic value to them, because a constructivist teacher views the student as a thinker in their own right, as opposed to the traditional class where they're viewed as that blank slate. The teacher views the student as having both the ability but also the desire to learn and to tackle this objective. The teacher's job then is to show the students the way, and really find out what their misconceptions and their prior knowledges are. That's huge in constructivism, because if you don't know that, when you don't know what the students do and don't know, so you don't know what you're actually needing to teach in some sort of hands-on activity, which again is another big part of constructivism, is the social aspect of it. They obviously encourage a lot of group work, and then in the group work, the students learn immensely through working with other students, they learn other perspectives, other opinions on certain information, and if they're in their zone of proximal development, they can learn from these students, both achieving higher than them and lower than them. There's been studies that say that students learn by both working with higher achieving and lower achieving students than themselves. The basic idea is that you just understand someone else's opinion and someone else's view on it, and again, you accommodate that into your own view, and it only strengthens your concept of the general idea. So the teacher, in that sense, works as a guide to help you understand that, to again facilitate you learning the subject yourself. The teacher really works as a mediator. They're really there in a group setting. The teacher walks around and kind of touches base with all the groups and kind of observes the individual students. And when they're having errors, or when they're confused, or when they don't understand that and understand something, the teacher really looks at that as an opportunity. They see that as an insight to the student's mind. They understand that that's where a student is having some problems or whatever, and they realize that that's where they can actually interject and help, offer some instruction or some guidance, and walk the student through what their misconception is, and hopefully the student themselves will acknowledge what the misconception is, and that they will be able to correct it, rather than the instructor having to tell the student what the error was and what they did wrong and how to fix it. In a traditional classroom, you obviously have your exams. Constructivist classroom set up a little differently as far as testing and assessment is set up. They don't encourage or necessarily recommend sit-down tests. This is constructivism. Sit-down paper and pencil tests. Assessment, in their viewpoint, should be carried out a little differently. It's kind of interwoven into the curriculum, so that instead of sitting back and watching students take a test, you are watching the students interact with something that displays knowledge of the concept. And at that point, you can observe them and notice at what point in time they get stuck, what point in time they need help. And again, that offers an insight into where the student is developmentally on the subject, rather than just looking at a question and marking it right or wrong. A multiple choice question, you get the question wrong, the teacher has no idea what the student's process of thinking was and why the student got the question wrong. It could be a monumental misunderstanding of the concept, or it could have been a small little accident that resulted in them circling C instead of B. In a constructivist classroom, the teacher has the opportunity to address that issue, has the opportunity to correct the misunderstandings, and has the opportunity to help the student build on their prior knowledge. And through doing this, it really makes these students care more about the class when they feel as though they are changing developmentally, when they are learning something and they are accomplishing something. It really gives the lesson an intrinsic value to the teacher. The teacher in a constructivist classroom obviously likes to have the class engaged and allows wait time in between the questions. They realize that wait time is think time instead of just awkward sit time in a traditional classroom. In a traditional class, the teacher asks a question and then they'll have a couple second pause and no one will say anything. And it's not necessarily because the students don't know the answer, but maybe it's because they don't want to actually answer the teacher. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to have the teacher tell them that they're wrong. In a constructivist classroom, the students are encouraged to raise their hands and answer, and the teacher always has follow-up questions. They want to dive deeper into the students' understanding and really find out what they know about this particular subject. The follow-up question with why is very popular. Or if they do answer incorrectly, instead of just saying no, it's why did you come to that conclusion? What made you think that? That way the teacher really has an understanding of what the student's misconception is, what the student's idea of the topic is, and that can help the teacher address it. And that's where the student needs help, and the teacher uses that as an insight to further build upon those questions. And a lot of times in a situation like that, you have the situation where one student asks a question and really 15 students have the question. And now by building on this, the teacher has really helped 15 students out by just asking this one question and follow-up question, where in traditional instruction it might just be the end of it, or the end of the question just with a no answer. So, I mean, in conclusion, the constructivist view really is that the child is the center of the classroom, that they construct their own knowledge, and that the teacher is a facilitator who wants to help the students along and make the information as real world and as relevant to them as possible, and kind of instill some intrinsic value to the education, make the child want to learn, and permitting social work, work in groups, inside the zone of proximal development, where so the students still have things to gain in the group work, and so that and then having testing more interwoven into the curriculum rather than paper and pencil tests to help more strongly identify where the misconceptions are with the students, to help again build that intrinsic value in the instruction and help the students actually want to learn. So that's a little bit of the general idea of constructivism. I look forward to diving a little bit more into the flavors, as we've come to call them in class. So I guess that will be in the coming weeks. Bye.